boys from Temporal Investigations. Always on time.
Edith Keeler must die.
I could be destined to fall in love with that woman and become my own great-grandfather.
Oh, that's Julian Bashir. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another, hopefully fantastic episode of Temporal Investigations. I'm Chad Kirshner, your host, and today with me I have somebody very special. You heard her laugh there a moment ago. She's an automotive journalist and editor at a site that rhymes a lot with Salop Rick. I don't know. I don't have anything witty to say there. She's a fan fiction aficionado, which we are, of course, definitely going to get into. And probably the most pro Detroit person I know, which I think is a good thing. I definitely growing up, I was like, Detroit, yeah, okay. But now, like, as an Ohio boy, I'm still like, yeah, no, I get it. I understand. Her favorite track is Deep Space Nine. Just so happens we're talking about it today. And her favorite character is, of course, going to be the subject of today's show. Plain simple, the tailor, the spy, the whatever. But it's a long way of saying Aaron Marquis is with us. Hello.
Hey, Chad.
Aaron.
How's it going?
I'm doing very well. That was a very long-winded intro, but we're going to talk about your favorite stuff today. So that's exciting.
Sure is.
Yeah, sure is. We were recording a little bit beforehand, which if you're a Patreon member at the commander level, you can listen to. But you said we're talking about your first kind of intro to Star Trek, and it was an old VHS tape of The Undiscovered Country. And we both talked about how much we loved Christopher Plummer's performance and kind of the over-the-top scenery chewing that comes with like a villain having fun. And if you look at, Deep Space Nine, characters that I think that were played, by people who were having fun. Garak. I think Andrew Robinson. There's a lot to unpack with both him and his character.
Sure.
But if you could summarize in 30 seconds why you love Elim Garak, how would you do it? Your elevator pitch, if you will.
Man, so Elim Garak is a really rare character on Star Trek. He's everyone's very forthright. Everyone's very, they try and do the right thing in Star Trek, and that can be pretty boring. Yes. I like a guy who's got a little bit of a swerve to him. He's a little bit, you don't really know what his deal is. You have to figure it out. And, Garak is a guy who he tries to make sure that his lying skills are always top notch, and you have to practice, as he reminds us.
He does, yes.
Excuse me. He's physically interesting as a Cardassian because all the other Cardassian actors are very tall, very broad. But even among his own people, he's a little bit of a sly character, and I just think that's great.
Right. Yeah, he is. It's funny. I was looking up the just to have it up for when we talk here. I have the Memory Alpha article of Elim Garak up, and occupations it has listed as spy, sure, assassin, yes, gardener.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Technically.
We learned, he was on Romulus as a gardener there, and when Odo's dying near the end of the series, spoiler alert for a 30-year-old show. We learned that he's a tailor. He's just a plain simple tailor. There's nothing really more to him. And then his story arc ultimately ends up with him being a rebel. Where he helps fight for the liberation of Cardassia against the Dominion. And then we learn all the way at the end, after all of that, at least in a mirror universe, and just as an FYI to people, I'm marking this episode as explicit, he's in a relationship with Julian Bashir, and they're fucking on the regular. at
Woo.
least in the Mirror Universe. So,
And boy, are fans thrilled.
and
Finally, after 30 years, what was obvious to both the actors and the writers, but not the executive producer, has become canon.
oh, the internet just exploded when they saw that episode, and like it was so right. And we are going to talk about, get more into that there, but that was so just like the right way, I think, to close that story loop and that arc. They had to do it in the Mirror Universe, or with a mirror character for it to make sense canonically. But you read the interviews around it, and both Andrew Robinson and Alexander Siddig were both like, "Yeah, this is how it was supposed to be."
Oh, well, when Andrew Robinson first saw Alexander Siddig, he literally was like, that's the most beautiful man I've ever seen in my life. I don't think he had a choice to play it straight at that point. He was like, damn. And they hired Alexander, or not Alexander, Andrew. He had always played bad guys, like really crazy bad guys, Dirty Harry and stuff like that. And they hired him because his eyes are so expressive. It can come through the face loaf. And then so now he gets to play this character that is very nuanced, has a lot of sides to him. Yeah, he's got kind of he's chaotic neutral. He's not even evil, like, really.
No, I think ultimately he's not. And they do explore some of that, like when he does realize that an Abrantane kind of is still wants to rejoin the Obsidian Order, and Odo and him get quote unquote captured by Tane when they try to destroy the Dominion the first time, and like and this is before we realize that Tane's Garak's father, but like throughout the series, Garak is trying to like win the approval of Tane, so he did some pretty crappy things to Odo. He tortured him to. And that was probably the closest he got to being like truly like evil. But of the people that he assassinates throughout the series, I think that's probably the most like, whoa, you've gone a little too far. Like you're really just a bad dude. But then he comes back, but he's brought back in through the storytelling of that second episode, of that two-parter, to where like him and Odo have an understanding after that, and it's the most that we really see about Garak's backstory until seasons later, when Garak or when Tane dies, when they're kidnapped by the Dominion, and Tane dies,
and really Garak's his manipulativeness and his willingness to do things in the moral gray is where we get one of the best episodes of DS9, which is in the Pale Moonlight.
Of course.
And man, the way he plays off of Cisco, and that is just it's just beautiful. And like he's like, you needed a morally gray person. That's why you came to me, physically and morally gray. Our boy Garak.
Yeah, it's like why else would you have come to me?
Right.
And I kind of at some point I just want to talk about that episode with some folks, because at the end, like when Garak is like, well, I had I was just prepared for in case the forgery and stuff didn't hold up, and I kind of don't know if he actually did. Like, I mean, he obviously admitted that was his plan all along, but I don't know how optimistic he was that Cisco's plan was going to work. But I don't know. Garak can live with it, and as Cisco tells us repeatedly into the computer screen, that he can deal with it.
Yeah. And Garak also, like, he has done tons of morally gray stuff. Like, back to Andrew Robinson, who is developing this character, he kept a diary and was developing all this backstory for a character who only shows up in about 33 episodes. Right. But he turned that diary into a really good book. I'm talking like really good action. Like, as a novel, it's good, but as a novel written by a actor for his character, it's just amazing. And apparently Andrew Robinson went to the actor who played Damar, and he was like, "Hey, did you ever come up with like a first name for your character so I can put it in the book?" He's like, "No, I didn't even bother." It's like, that's the two different kinds of actor,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Could you what's the name of that so listeners can
The book is called A Stitch in Time, and they actually just released an audio version last year read by Andrew Robinson himself. And it's written as a letter to Bashir while Garak is living in the ruins of Cardassia. And Cardassia basically looks like Berlin 1945. And he's totally without hope. And at some point, Bashir drops him a line and he takes forever to respond. So when he responds, he basically writes his whole life story out for Bashir. And it is a fascinating look at the character. It takes all these little nuggets that you get throughout the seasons and it expands wildly on them. Like he's yes, a gardener on Romulus, but his father was a gardener in the war memorial and taught him how to do this gardening, and they live underneath Anabramtain because his mother is the housekeeper, and he figures out Anabram's his real father pretty early on.
Mhm.
But it's like this secret that everybody keeps. It's all these secrets on top of secrets. And I don't want to ruin the end of the book, but at the end of the book, Garak I won't ruin too much, but he's with a doctor who is his partner. It's a male doctor he's partnered up with, and
Right.
they're building little memorials to just give people something to do. They're like piling up rocks, and people are like, it's giving the survivors just something to do.
Right.
And it's really moving. It's a really, really good book.
And just as a spoiler for people who haven't seen a 30-year-old TV show,
Mhm.
Last episode of Deep Space Nine, the female shapeshifter orders the basically the genocide of the Cardassian people. Some 800 million end up dying. And Garrick says one of the lines that I quote quite a bit, which is straight from Shakespeare. Our fault, our dear doctor, was not in our hearts or in our stars, but in ourselves.
Mhm.
Which is I forget what Shakespeare play it is. It's the Merchant of whatever.
Merchant of Venice.
Yes, the Merchant of Venice.
Mhm.
And yeah, like just real. We never really see what happens there. There is an episode of Starfleet Academy, which you haven't seen, that addresses kind of what happened to Cisco. But we don't really kind of know what happens to the Cardassian people. We know that there's Cardassians in the 32nd century. The president of the Federation in Discovery, she was half Cardassian, half Bajoran.
Whoa.
So we know that we know that they survived.
Mhm.
But in on-screen canon, we don't have a lot of to go by there. One other really just great thing that I love about Garak itself, before we talk a little bit more about on-screen canon and the writing stuff, and sort of like the culture around specifically fan fiction. We're going to expose all of your fan fiction love there for everybody.
Woo.
But I love in that two-parter, where Garak goes to meet Thane, to go to the Gamma Quadrant to destroy the Dominion. When he blows up his own shop, which is the look on his face, like when Odo's like, "You blew up your own shop."
And yes, someone finally got him.
Yeah, and like the eye, like again, because Andrew is so expressive with his eyes, especially with that Cardassian makeup. You just like, that feels like the one time that he was bested, that he was beat, like somebody figured out like the actual thing, and he was almost stunned by it. Like I think that when he pays then his flowers to Odo, gives him his flowers for his roses for figuring it out, like I think he really means it. Like, wow, like holy shit, you figured this out.
Oh yeah, there's another great Odo line where Garak is he's I forget what the context is, but Odo says, Well, he doesn't know, because if he did, he'd be spinning a lie right now.
Yes, later, like it's so good. Odo has him figured out. Like Odo has him dead to rights pretty early on. But what's interesting is they ended up still really having Garak could be, I don't want to say the foil of Bashir, because he's not really a foil, but like that's the pairing where Odo really got paired with Quark, as sort of the two characters back and forth. But in that episode where he blows up his own shop, Garak's in sick bay or in the infirmary, and Bashir, being kind of the loving, caring doctor that he is to his pal. It's like, you should really help us. People are trying to kill you. And he's like, well, Major Kira, what's her whereabouts? And Odo's like, whatever, right? And everybody leaves, and it's just Bashir and Garak. And Garak is like, he's like, why is it no one ever believes me when I'm telling the truth? Bashir, have you ever heard of the story of the boy who cried wolf? No. And Bashir goes on to explain, it's, young shepherd boy, eventually, like he basically cries wolf. Garak says clever lad, charming story. Bashir's like, I'm not finished. The next day the boy does it again and again and again. And eventually on the fourth day the boy cries out on top of his lungs, but the villagers ignore him, and the boy and his flock are gobbled up because the wolf really comes. And Garak's like, that's a little graphic for children, wouldn't you say?
Right, like Cardassians don't torture captains in front of their children.
Right, but it's just like the way that he was like a little graphic for children, and there's just enough pause. Bashir Siddig gives just enough pause for you to think, yeah, actually that is a pretty graphic story. But then Bashir's the point is, if you lie all the time, nobody's going to believe you, even when you're telling the truth. And here's the genius. Garak is like, are you sure that's the point, Doctor? Bashir's like, of course. What else could it be? And Garak, that you should never tell the same lie twice.
That's great.
And the way he delivers that line, the way you should never tell the same line twice, and the way the camera kind of holds on him, and kind of just a little bit of eye contact from Bashir, like it so summarizes sort of Garak's nature. Like I really love the way that he plays that character.
It reminds me of some of their literature conversations too, where Garak is like, how does Macbeth not see what's going on? This guy's a fucking idiot. Sorry, there's the swearing. But like, how does Macbeth not, like, he's supposed to be so smart? And just like the way they just pass each other in the night on fiction like that all the time is a totally different perspectives.
I knew Brutus was going to kill him after the end of the first act, and it took 3 acts and then Bashir is like, but that's the tragedy of it. We all see it coming, and he's just like, whatever, boring.
Sounds like an idiot. Sounds like an idiot to me.
Which goes to, I think, to your point you were saying earlier about how Cardassians kind of look down on kind of everybody else. You learn about all of Cardassian's rich culture and literature and
the repetitive epic is the most elegant form of Cardassian literature.
Right. Like you learn this throughout both Next Gen and Deep Space Nine. And they really do think they're the superior race of the galaxy. And I think that's when Garak delivers that line at the very end of the series, our fault, dear Doctor, was not in our stars, but in ourselves. Like that was actually saying, almost like he's like, the Cardassians deserve it. They were too arrogant, and they were too, full of themselves, and they kind of let what happened. And of course, they didn't deserve to be genocided. Nobody does, to be clear. But that is, I think, the real good kind of bow tie on, like, maybe the Cardassians, should have looked inward instead of outward.
Right. I do want to mention there is a part where Garak does surprise Odo, where he says, you'd shoot a man in the back.
It's the safest way.
It's the safest way. That's just encapsulate. It's so Garak. In Our Man Bashir, when Bashir's play acting at being 007, and Garak walks in, he's like, "What the? This isn't how spies live." and it's and the Cardassians are a militaristic race. It would be his experience as a spy was probably very rough, very meager life, very lonely, and to see Bashir swanning around like with women and money and apartments must have just kind of spun him pretty hard.
And the way he plays it, like he's like, this is ridiculous. And Bashir keeps like, this is fantasy. It's like, maybe your fantasy.
Right. No,
Yeah.
what's ridiculous is seeing a Cardassian in a turtleneck. Weird choice.
For a tailor.
Yeah.
Or a tailor, which apparently he was pretty good at. Zial said he was the greatest tailor in the galaxy.
Yeah. Zial wasn't very experienced. She lived most of her life in a constant or a work camp, so she doesn't know what she's talking about.
I do like when they go on their first quote unquote date, and
how gross! She's like 16 and he's like 45.
Yeah, like they Bashir's like, well, that's Gul Dukat's daughter. They should have been like, she is 12. Like that should have been the problem.
Yeah.
Ultimately, when they recast her, I think it fits a little bit better. Because they did recast her at least for the season 6. But it is kind of funny that like he takes a phaser with him to that first date. Because he's like, well, you're not going to try to kill me. You're Gul Dukat's daughter. Like, she does kind of read him the riot act a little bit. Like, look, not everything is spycraft and deceiving. And she's like, Cardassians don't like the cold, and it's really cold here.
Yeah, but I mean, Garak has to operate like that. He has to operate like, especially Gul Dukat, who has tried to get him murdered a few times. So yes. I don't blame him on that one at all.
Yeah. When they're fighting, they're fighting the Klingons when the Klingons board in season 4, which is leads to that line of shooting in the back. He's then telling before he says about shooting in the back. He's like, there's this time I saw Dukat and his back turned to me, and that's when I just like, you'd shoot a man in the back, and like then after he's like, it's the only way. It's like by the end of the day we'll all wish that I have done it. And truth be told, probably
yep, probably should have done that, buddy, but
I actually like Dukat as a villain a lot. I that's not this show to talk about it, but I really do like that. And Garak, though, really, the internet fell in love with him, and I think that, and rightfully so. I think he's a great character, and a character that we haven't seen in Star Trek before. But I want to talk a little bit more about some of the undertones. I think what works, why I think Garak and Bashir ultimately worked, was because I don't know if Alexander Siddig had it figured out right away, but he figured it out pretty quick that the undertones of the relationship with Garak is what's going to make this a compelling storyline.
Right. It had to be pretty subtle, because Rick Berman was very annoyed by the excitement and fascination Andrew Robinson had about Alexander Siddig. He played it as being quite enchanted with him, and the more, like, I think that's why Zial, that's my theory, is that why Zial came onto the show is like, all right, we got to give Garak something straight to do, right? Because he's mooning over this doctor a little too much, and it just didn't take, because you can't fake that kind of chemistry,
right?
And they tried to make Bashir, God, the cringiest thing about season 1 is Bashir trying to be a ladies' man. Yeah. It just comes off so gross. But he did have this chemistry with Andrew that was very playful. It's very fun, and it is flirtatious in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like when they're first trying to figure out the first time that Garak invites him to lunch. And it's supposed to be around like they're trying to learn more about.
And he's spiraling. He's like, "What do I do?" He's going to all his little homies. He's like, "Help me! What should I wear? This green old thing?"
Right, and it's like he's trying to play it up like, oh well, he's going to try to recruit me into a spycraft, or he's going to try to do this or whatever. And I forget which character it was. Maybe it was even Cisco. Who was like, "Are you sure it's just not lunch?" But you're right. The way that he plays it is like, oh my gosh, this person just asked me out. Like, what do I wear? How do I go? What do I need to do? Like, and that was the first, I think, real kind of natural character relationship. Like, I think that those two worked so much better than the tried forcing of Bashir and Dax. I liked how Dax kind of played off some of Bashir's advances, but it was clear they just didn't have like real chemistry. I think they eventually developed it, but right out of the gate, yeah, Siddig and Robinson were both just like horny for each other. I mean, not I don't know if actually they were, but that's
Probably
definitely
not.
how they probably not. But that is how they both played the role. And horny undertones. Not the first time we've seen this in Star Trek.
Yeah, no. So it really does remind me of the Spurk. It's called Spurk. It's Spock and Kirk.
Right.
Kirk is on the bridge getting a back rub, and he thinks it's Spock. They go to a planet to fight to get their horniness out. Like it's there's a lot of there's been undertones for a while. Gene Roddenberry said he thought of Spock and Kirk as Hephaestus and Alexander the Great. They weren't just friends,
Right.
That was an intentional decision, and I feel like Rick Berman was. I mean, he's the man of the cat suit era.
Yeah.
He's the one who told Marina that she couldn't wear a regular uniform. She had to wear the sexy cat
Right.
suit uniform. He's the one who brought on 7 of 9. And as fun as 7 of 9 is, it became the 7 of 9 show because of the TNA.
Yeah.
So like there was and the 80s and 90s, very uncomfortable time for queer people in general. It was always going to be subtext. And in some ways it is more fun because it allowed a lot of people to develop these relationships outside of the official canon. And that's where like fan fiction really comes from, is from Spock and Kirk. It was born via Amok Time. And it came about from women in their 30s and 40s typing up stories and then photocopying them at their jobs and distributing zines. It's that old, this idea of taking characters that you like and fixing what can't be shown to everybody else.
So, just to give the audience a little bit of background for a spoiler of now a 60-year-old TV show. 59 because it was season 2, but season 2 opens with Amok Time, and we learn that Spock is very ill, and he's very agitated as he's very ill. Nurse Chapel tries to bring him some plomeek soup, and he throws it out. Though we learn in Strange New Worlds there's some canonical reasons why he might not have liked the soup. I digress. But this is where we learn about we learn so much about Vulcans in this episode. Like, this episode is the premier Vulcan lore episode, where we learn that all Vulcans are jerks, and they are. It's not just when Spock's not a jerk, that's his human side, because all Vulcans are jerks. We also learn about the mating of Vulcans, and every 7 years, Vulcan males go through something called Ponfar, and for some reason, they either have to bone or they have to fight it out. I'm not sure exactly why the fighting out is sufficient to replace boning, but
hey, you saw Kirk's titty window. You know exactly why.
Yeah, fair. And there's so much like fake, like greasy faces and hot, sweaty madness. But basically, Spock has a wife, though they don't really see each other much because he's in space. She basically wants another man. He comes back to mate. She doesn't want to mate with him. For some reason, there's an alternative that you can fight it out. And Kirk, thinking that he's going to be this excellent representation of the Federation to the Vulcan leader who's there, I forget her name, wants to look real good to the Vulcan High Command, and she's like, "Oh yeah, you can fight for instead of this other person's champion in your face or whatever. Like, yeah, you just have to fight to the death. That's the one thing." And then you're like, "Wait, what?" Um, which that ends up being a trope in Star Trek, but they fight. Thanks to Vulcan not being Earth, um, Kirk kind of fakes his own death, and Spock is very happy to find that Jim is not dead. Very, very happy.
Very happy.
Yeah. Because Leonard Nimoy had pretty much established at that point that Vulcans don't laugh or explore a lot of emotion. The pilot in the first couple episodes notwithstanding. And this was like a real emotional, like, Jim. So that's basically the episode. For those who haven't seen it, you should go watch it if you haven't. But
It's classic.
you see these
episode.
hot, sweaty men fighting back and forth in their Star Trek fighting style, with great music. The it's so good, and it establishes so much lore. But something that maybe I definitely didn't realize when I first saw it was this launched the 1,000 fanfic zines. And I didn't really actually become aware of the fanfic stuff until I got the internet. But you're saying it was well before then that people were writing their own interpretations of Kirk and Spock and their relationship.
Definitely. Science fiction has always been a huge genre for women. Two of my favorite sci-fi writers, Ursula Le Guin and N.K. Jensum, sorry. They both started their careers as young women writing Star Trek fan fiction. And they are some of the most brilliant sci-fi writers, I think. Ursula Le Guin is, very, very. She's been writing. She's passed now, but she's been writing since the 70s, and it's something that, like, science fiction and Star Trek in general too. When Star Trek first came out, it really did appeal to women. It's a more egalitarian society. You see women on the bridge. You see women doing work outside the home. This is the 60s. So women who had jobs would, type it up and distribute it at Comic Cons and when the first cons first started. So it really, like, fan fiction in connection with Star Trek has a really near and dear place for fans of just sci-fi in general and for women in general. And I feel like, people denigrate it a lot. There's a lot of really bad stuff out there. My Immortal is this notoriously bad self-insert fan fic. It's not even really a fanfic. It's just like it's written in that style that just turned 20 years old this last week. So, like, it's known as schlocky, but it's really important to a lot of women. I wrote fanfic as a kid. I will fully admit it. I still read it as a comfort thing. I love DS9. I want to see more of DS9. DS9 is not. They're not making more of it, but there are people out there doing it for free, for the love of the game. And especially in Star Trek, where you have a million novels, to denigrate fan fiction doesn't make any sense. These are people who are so passionate about this show that they are keeping it alive decades after it ended, and that's beautiful to me.
Yeah, we went through this really kind of dry period of there being no Star Trek. I mean, from the end of Enterprise to the 2009 reboot movie.
What's really beautiful too is that during COVID, Andrew Robinson and Alexander Siddig got together and they read fan scripts as the characters, and they were romantic fanfics. So even the actors see the value in these fan works and celebrated them and enjoyed them.
One of the things that I mean, it's very well known that very early on, like William Shatner just kind of didn't necessarily care for the fans. The whole "get a life" comment, where Nimoy was much more sort of accepting to it. But like the characters that acting in Star Trek, being a Star Trek character, is kind of whatever you want to make of it. There have been guest stars that, or certain actors that just it's a paycheck, and it's fine. It can be just a paycheck. There's nothing wrong with that. But the characters, the actors that really want to become part of history in a lot of ways, to really explore the lore and to really be endearing to the fans, is to get into it the way that Alex and Andrew did during COVID, or the way Nimoy fostered those relationships, and the way that you see, I mean, fanfic to this day, and like being as a respected form of content. I mean, content, that's a terrible word. A respected form of like entertainment and enjoyment, and a way to express yourself. And really, up until recently, Star Trek hasn't been very representative of its audience, and hasn't really been a way for somebody to kind of explore their side of their experience in the Star Trek. A middle-aged white guy, I mean, I'm captain of the Enterprise, like that's I've always, and I'm drawn to the captain characters, but that's, but again, I'm a middle-aged white guy. So it feels I've definitely grown to appreciate all of the fandom and the way that people kind of express it. Not that I ever poo-pooed it or anything, but there's a lot of stuff out there I'm completely unaware of.
Yeah, there was a con where I can't think of the actor who plays Damar, but he and Jeffrey Combs were answering questions, and they said, it's kind of a bummer nobody ever wrote a fanfic about us having sex. I swear to God, the next day that was all you could find.
Man, is Jeffrey Combs, is he queer coded in Deep Space Nine? I feel like he kind of is.
I don't know. I am such a Vorta fan. I just think they are just, because again, they're bad guys who are having a blast at it, who know that they're right, who talk down to you a little bit,
right?
But they look so beautiful, and they're just so sweet, and they're just such bitches. I fucking love the Vorta. I love the Vorta.
Well, the Vorta, like I was reading through some script notes on the episode for the ship, which is the one where the Jem'Hadar cruiser crashes on the planet, and Kike gets shot by and ends up dying, and because there's a dying founder on the ship. That the woman who plays that Vorta, one, oh my god. Two, in the script notes for it, she's written to be, competent, intelligent, but also kind of flirty. Like the Vorta are designed, they're engineered canonically, I guess, to be flirty with whoever they're working with, because you're not really trying to honeypot them per se.
You're disarming.
You're trying to be disarming to them,
right,
in any way possible. And I feel like Wayoon does his job well, I feel like. I don't know if I ever saw like him and Damar fucking. I don't know if I actually picked up that vibe, though there is a lot of anger and resentment of Wayoon to Damar. Like Damar really doesn't like Wayoon.
Yeah, they're always fun together because they are very snipey at each other. It's very fun. The reason why there weren't fanfics before they said that was that that pairing doesn't really always make sense, I think. Right. Whereas, Garak and Bashir, like we were talking earlier about how there's that episode where O'Brien has a Cardassian come on to him because he's been arguing with this woman all day, and that's flirting. And I'm like, how they didn't just smash cut to the Replimat with these two yelling at each other about literature. It's like you set up this canon thing and then you just ignore it for these two. What are you doing?
Because it really does catch O'Brien off guard. That's not the first time that there's an engineer that's tried to hit on him in that series, but that one was completely out of left field. Like we were just fighting, and the engineer is just like, well, you're competent and you're smart and you fight well. Like, okay.
She's like, oh, I don't want to really talk about you putting a baby in me, but I guess we can go there. And he's like, what?
Yeah. And it's like, whoa, turn this bus around.
Right.
What is going on?
And just the little ways too that Garak just likes to screw with Bashir. I love the there's a data rod in my room. If I don't come back, I want you to take that rod and eat it.
And he's like, eat it? He's like,
and Bashir is so game until he realizes he's being screwed with. It's just, he plays it so well. The eye roll is fantastic.
Yeah. Well, it is kind of almost like, he's hanging on his crush's every words.
Yeah.
Like they try to play, like it's written as, oh, hey, he still believes he's a spy and he's really enamored with the spycraft. And to some extent, maybe he is, but it's also just like your crush is asking you to do something. Of course you're going to do it.
And we haven't even talked about my favorite Garak episode yet, The Wire, which is just, it's Alexander Siddig and Andrew Robinson playing off of each other for 45 minutes, and it's fantastic. It's just the sweeping and speeches, the anger, the Garak. We learned so much about Garak in that episode, and there is still so much patience and tenderness from the Doctor that Bashir puts his career at risk. He puts his life at risk to save Garak, this guy who I only have lunch with him once a week and I barely know him. But it feels like that's the episode where it's like, this changes. There's something more going on here. And it's a much warmer relationship than we have seen previously. Especially too because now Garak isn't high. He was high for the first season and a half. We find out that glowing smile is not. Should I explain The Wire?
We probably should. Just
sure.
A real Tane. That's where we first are introduced to Tane. It's a season 2 episode, very close to the end of season 2. Elim Garak's on drugs. Explain.
Yeah, so he has a device implanted in his brain that he could turn on if he was being tortured that would stimulate the pleasure centers of his brain. And being on DS9 is torture for him. He says, it's too cold, the lights are too bright, everybody hates me here. So I turned it on and never turned it off, and it starts to degrade. He basically has the brain of an addict now, though he has to have that endorphin rush, and it's not cutting the pain anymore. It's just his normal. So Bashir has to go into, across basically enemy lines to find this former head of the only guy who has been able to retire from the Obsidian Order without getting murdered. That's how powerful and dangerous Tane is. And Bashir goes straight to him and says, give me a way to save Garak. And Tane, great line. Tane's like, funny, I thought you were his friend. You should just let him die.
Yep.
And it's just, Tane is just such a great introduction to Tane, but like, they give them both so many close-ups and so many big sweeping moments, and it's just like everybody's acting their little hearts out. There's even a funny moment at the bar. I can't remember it right now, but Quarks, where Bashir takes the Kanar bottle, puts it behind his back, and Quark just takes it while he's walking away. And it's just like, even in this very serious episode, there is this moment of levity that everybody's kind of working to, like, okay, we have to figure out what's going on with Garak.
Right.
And then further on in the show, when the war is going on and they're on the Defiant, and Alexander Siddig has his shirt open, which is always a good episode. They have that back and forth of not so boyish anymore. There just seems like there's so much more subtext going on.
It's that it's my boyish charm, and not such a boy anymore.
Yeah, he gives him his daddy card.
Yeah. You talk about that storyline of Garak not liking being on the station is carried on through to that episode we were talking about earlier, when he goes to ascertain, to go visit Tane, go to the Gamma Quadrant, was after he blew up his own shop. Like, what was it? Odo's like, you looked like you enjoyed blowing up your own shop, and like, because he eventually admits, I think in that episode, at the end of that episode, he's like, it turns out I'm actually a pretty good tailor. I don't like being a tailor, but I'm pretty good at it.
And in The Wire, we also hear him say, like, while he's having his breakdown, the best part of living on DS9 is the only thing he has to look forward to is lunch with Bashir.
Yep.
That's all he has.
Yep.
And that, that's a big thing to say to someone who's just a friend.
Yeah. Well, and I think that you could, I'm not saying you should, but I think you could just write this off as, well, not write it off, but like explain it as, well, Bashir was really the first person to come to talk to Garak. Like there was kind of, or was the other way around, I don't remember, but like one of them extended an olive branch, and most everybody else wasn't willing to trust the Cardassian. Like, they didn't necessarily hate him or think he was still a spy, but you're not going to get on a Bajoran controlled station. You're not going to find a lot of Bajorans that like you.
There's only so many nights you can listen to Morn talk and talk and talk.
Right?
At work,
he just never shuts up. So you could say, I mean, you can definitely kind of hand wave it away as being like, oh, they're just really good friends. But like, when you kind of watch it, you're like, well, I mean, you are in such an absolute hell that you have to abuse this device designed to make you be able to withstand torture. You're in an absolute hell, but the one saving grace is Alexander Siddig. I mean, I guess I get it. He's an attractive dude, but like, yeah, it's very clear that like that there alone would have probably inspired a lot of fan fiction just from that, like. Because it is a love story. I think that's.
It's people like to fill in the gaps. It's fun to say what if, and to express that and share it with other people who also have this passion is really gratifying. I'm just grateful that so many people out there have taken it upon themselves in their free time to create more of DS9 in a way that it, maybe, not everybody knows about it, but I get to experience it. I think it's fun.
Yeah. I know in a previous recording of this, I was talking to Robbie Baldwin, I said, well, I think it was with Ben. I said stuff about like certain books, like books aren't canonical and stuff. And, technically canon is what you see on screen. But that doesn't, I don't think that diminishes or makes any of this other stuff any less worthy of being on screen. And I think one of the great things about modern Trek on New Trek is, one, it's way more inclusive, which I think is great. Scants are back, which I also think is great. But I mean, you have a queer Klingon who wants to be a scientist who wears a scant. It's like,
that's great. I've always wondered about the other Klingons, the ones who are thirsting for glory, the guys who work in the office, the guys
somebody has to be a pencil pusher, right?
Right. Somebody has to build the ships, and they're not out murdering, they're out designing,
Right.
consoles and stuff.
And
So
maybe they don't make the greatest doctors. Martok said that in that same episode where Bashir's shirt's a little torn.
they got 2 organs. They don't need great doctors.
Yeah, they've got, and we learn also that they have 4 testicles. So 2 penises, 4 testicles.
You got to have backups.
You do. You have to have a redundant system. But I think to bow tie that is that you have people in the writers' rooms of these shows who were fans growing up, who were reading the fan fiction and the books and all of this other content. Tawny Newsome, amongst, I mean, there's other great writers in that writers' room, including some Star Trek authors. But like, she has such a deep understanding of Star Trek and its lore, well beyond just what we saw on TV.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're seeing that come into the quote unquote official canon because it's all being written in. And it's all being explored and stuff like that. So you end up with Bashir and Garak in a relationship.
Right,
a
because
Lower Decks
that's
episode where
she knows that's what the fans want, and
Yes.
she gave it to us. God bless her.
Yeah. I think you're seeing a lot of that in Starfleet Academy and stuff too. I think the Wire episode, and I think is a really good way to kind of close up our discussion for right now, anyways, of Deep Space Nine and Garak. At the end of the Wire, again, for people who haven't watched it, you should go watch it. It's really good. But Garak is basically, he has to, or he's telling all of these stories about his life before Deep Space Nine and things like that. And at the end, after he's cured, it's basically the end of the episode. Well, not cured, but he's clean. Bashir asks him, he's like, "Well, of all the stories you told me, which ones were true and which ones weren't?" My dear doctor, they're all true. And Bashir's like, "Even the lies, especially the lies."
Highly memed moment. And honestly, if you want to know the truth, at least Alexander Siddig's version, read A Stitch in Time. It's a fantastic book.
Link will be in the show notes. If people want to, I guess, Aaron, are you working on anything cool you want to talk about? Is there anything fun you'd like to share? Any cause? We'll talk about Jalopnik in a second, but anything you want to kind of pimp beyond that? Anything you're excited to read? Anything you want to,
You know what? Not at the moment. I am working on stuff that's personal, but I don't really have anything to pimp necessarily.
So, that's because she spends all of her waking hours at the blog factory, writing about cars. She kind of runs the newsroom there at Jalopnik, keeps the ship together, holds the tight ship.
Well, as tight as I can with that crew, but yeah, been at Jalopnik for quite a while and very proud of it. And people should come in and read us up if they like cars.
Yeah, I have been telling people that, like, hey, this isn't a car podcast. I don't ever want it to necessarily be one.
Dear God, no.
No, God. But a lot of my friends work in the industry, and it turns out, I think one of the great things about, again, getting to meet people like you through the course of doing all of this is there's a lot of Star Trek fans that are also in the business, which no disrespect to people who are into watches, but like most of the people, it seems like, are into cars and watches. And like, how about cars and Star Trek? That's kind of cool. That kind of works for me. So
yeah, we're thick out here. We if you like cars, you like Star Trek, you like trains. What I'm saying is we're a neurotypical people, and we find our own.
We are, and Aaron has written about Star Trek on Jalopnik, so it's always worth checking that out. And she does still owe me an article on Jalopnik about Avery Brooks doing IBM commercials in the 2000s.
Oh my God, you're right.
Wow, where are flying cars? Where? Oh, that's so good. Thank you. I guess I should say I'm also an automotive journalist. I do some work at Jalopnik. Aaron puts up with me, thank goodness. I've also been recently in Ars Technica talking about some stuff, but like, you don't really care about that. What you should do, though, is if you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, you should. The best thing you can do right now, if you do like it and maybe want to see it succeed, I hope you do, is to share it with a friend. There's more listeners the better. If you want to go maybe a step beyond that, leaving a review on iTunes, on Apple Podcasts, is a great way to kind of help juice that algorithm a little bit. And if you really, really, really like it and want to throw some money at it, patreon.com/Starbates80 is our little Patreon where we get some fun little benefits. But again, no obligations on any of that stuff. Just, I want you to listen and enjoy it, because it's fun to talk about Star Trek. Aaron, thanks for joining me and talking about Star Trek.
I am always happy to talk about Star Trek. It is my favorite, and I hope I can come back and do some more Star Trek talk.
We will absolutely do that. But until then, I downloaded this while we were chatting. Hold on. Oh, that's not the part of it. Yeah, there we go. Such great fight music. Anyways,
sexy stuff.
Sexy stuff. Anyways, I'll see you all next time.
Later.